Hey everybody, how's it going out there? This is Jeff, the guy from Reston here. Normally we talk about men's issues, maybe cars. Tonight we're going to talk about something that I think is really important that I think we need to talk about. And I think what we need to talk about is what's going on around the country right now concerning the arrest incident that happened with George Floyd in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Anyways, this is what I have to say, and it's my opinion. So if you disagree with it, please below put down your disagreement and why. I'd love to read it. Whatever you have to say, believe me. My opinion is my opinion, and that's all there is to it. So let's get started with this issue. Number one, George Floyd. And I looked up some data to find out, to make sure that I'm arguing from a perspective of relevance and also trying to give you the facts as they are. And so I did look up George Floyd, and I looked at what he was actually being arrested for. And what the man was being arrested for was passing a counterfeit $20 bill at the store. So obviously they had one of the little scanners in the store that, when you normally they do it for 50s and hundreds, but for some reason they did it for the $20 bill that Mr. Floyd gave them. And obviously it went, it showed up as a bad 20. And, so that's what happened there. Now, I like to give Mr. Floyd the benefit of the doubt that he got this 20, say, from a bank or something like that. And, and because of that reason, he, and it happens, every once in a while you get you get money out of a bank, and every so often you'll get a bad one. You'll get a 20 that, you'll get some kind of a bad 20 in there. You'll get some money, some counterfeit money in there. It happens because, our the guard against our money system is not foolproof. So I'd like to give Mr. Floyd the benefit of the doubt on that, considering what happened to him. Now, the four officers that actually arrested him, they're basically, let's see, where was it here? I had it right there on the news. Okay, here it is, right here. The officer that arrested Mr. Floyd, his name was T.G.F.R. Now, or not Chauvin, Chauvin, Derek Chauvin. And from what I understand, Mr. Chauvin actually knew George Floyd. He worked part-time as security for this club that George Floyd was a bouncer at. So, they knew each other. So I kind of find it hard to believe that, if a police officer knows you, more than likely he's going to say, hey, listen, I have to arrest you, for the counterfeit 20, and, please come, and, and because most cops are like that. Now, on the other hand, Mr. Chauvin, that arrested George Floyd, he was the one who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, causing asphyxiation, which allowed George Floyd to die. There's one thing: when you as a police officer take a person into custody and they are handcuffed, you are then they're responsible for that person's well-being because they are in your custody as a police officer. Now, I want to make that perfectly clear in this to begin with. So if you have a person and they are handcuffed, they are in your custody. Okay, there's no point in putting this person on the ground and kneeing on them, telling them to get up when you're kneeing on them. when you got your knee and body weight on them. There's no point in doing this. And from what I understand, and I could be wrong on this, but Mr. Chauvin um, had a series of complaints against him over the last few years. I think he had like 15 or 16 complaints against him, some for excessive force. There were plenty of complaints against this man. I mean, really, to tell you the truth, not everybody's cut out to be a police officer. And when you're a police officer, you're only a human being. And sometimes there's a limit for all of us to stop. We have to stop. We can no longer do that kind of work, because at that point, we know that emotionally we can't handle it. And we're going to let our feelings override our thinking decisions. So that's the first thing. This man should have been put on a desk. He had no business being out there on the street for all those complaints that were against him. He should have been riding a desk. What he was doing out there with 3 other officers that only had just a few days on duty was he their training officer? I do not know. What I do know is the fact that if this man was their training officer, he was an awfully bad training officer. And, for these other 3 officers who actually have lost their jobs, and because they happen to be on that scene right there, they're being charged. Actually, they're being given criminal charges. This is something that when I didn't go to a civilian police department academy. I went to a military police department academy. I was a military policeman in the Marine Corps. When I went to that military police academy, there were certain things they taught us about handcuffing and other things like that. They also told us that when a suspect is in your custody, that you have the ardent responsibility of making sure that that person, once they're in your custody, their health and well-being is your responsibility. So, because it is your responsibility, that you shouldn't be allowing anything bad to happen to that person once they're in your custody. Now, what those officers did to Mr. Floyd once he was in their custody was incorrect, and yes, they should be punished for it and everything else like that, irregardless of George Floyd's criminal history. And I actually did look up George Floyd's criminal history. He had a long, extensive criminal history up until that point. Armed robbery, he was in for 5 years. There was a number of other criminal acts that he did. I don't want to pull them all up, but this man was not a 100% pure. But that's still no excuse for what the police officers did to this man. My thing in thinking is there's something else here that we're not seeing and we're not looking at because we're so engaged in, quote, systemic racism. Let me tell you something about racism. Racism is when one person believes that another person is inferior to them. I'm sorry, but nobody is we live in the United States of America. This is a country where everybody is free. Not all people are equal, but everybody is free. Okay. Some people choose to live in a gutter. Other people want to live up on the top of the mountain. It doesn't matter where you want to live, where you live in society, whether you're poor, whether you're middle class, lower middle class, or upper middle class, or wealthy or rich. It doesn't matter whether you are one of those facets in life. You as a citizen have a responsibility to uphold the law. And if you're basically doing something that's criminal, you deserve to be arrested. You deserve to go to jail. You deserve these things. Most of these, I'm going to say most of them, most of these things were people lose their lives at the hands of the police, usually involving resisting arrest. And that's usually what these things involve. Um, I'm sorry that this is going to offend people, but I think we need to take a step back and look at the picture and not get so emotionally driven over this. Yes, it was regrettable what happened to George Floyd. It should not have happened. I agree with you. The cops need to be prosecuted. The cops that were responsible need to be prosecuted, and basically, some of them do need to go to jail um, or go to prison. That I'm in agreement with you with. Okay, now the other thing is, I think we need to look at what's going on around the country with all this violence that's going on. I'm not talking about the protesters. I'm talking about the people that are committing acts of violence, attacking people in the street, attacking businesses, firebombing businesses, turning around and attacking people that are driving by in cars. You know, um, this is not protesting. You are basically have turned yourself and have become a criminal. You're not giving George Floyd any type of justice by doing this. You're not, when you beat somebody up on the street, you're not giving George Floyd justice. And here's the other thing too, for all those people that talk about Black Lives Matter, you shot a black man in front of a store that was protecting a store that he knew the owner of the store. And you shot this man center mass and he died. And that was a black man. So don't give me this crap about Black Lives Matter. That's a load of crap right there. I can give you statistical data that basically says this Black Lives Matter is more of a farce than anything else. So that's a fact of life. Um, you know, well, we're going to talk about these things. And I tell you one thing, a lot of us that are out here watching this on the sidelines, where we see it on videos on YouTube or news podcasts that are in Instagram or Facebook or whatever, we're tired of seeing this. We're tired of seeing these people go around here in mobs, doing what they want, destroying property, attacking people for no reason at all whatsoever that had nothing to do with the George Floyd situation. And now we're spreading this thing all the way over into Britain, and you've got people protesting there for an incident that happened in Minneapolis that should have been dealt with by the officials in Minneapolis. Maybe not the city of Minneapolis, but the state should have taken over the investigation as an outside investigator to look at everything. That's what should have happened. There is no excuse. There is no excuse for committing wanton criminal acts and saying that's a protest. That is not a protest. Now, if you want to stand here and hold up signs and this and that and blame people for something, I hate to tell you this, the news media has a lot to answer for on this, because they're the ones that are stirring people up, getting people excited, making these blank public statements on their broadcasts, especially on CNN, the fake news network. These people are responsible for driving people insane, and they need to be held. The news media in this country needs to be held accountable and responsible for what they say and how they say it and how they address the public. And if they don't, then somebody should come along, buy them out, and turn around and fire these newscasters and get rid of them, and put people in there that are going to make balanced newscasts that are not going to be emotionally overdriven, driving people. We need to have a square account and balance of the situation and the facts. And we're not going to do this when we have newscasters, spouting out things that are getting people all drummed up and everything like that, and making people upset. And this is what's driving people to go out there and commit acts of violence and things of that nature. Well, I've got a question for those people out there who want to basically commit acts of violence. Here's one thing for you to say, and that is, you're not doing anything to help Mr. Floyd. You're not doing anything to help Mr. Floyd rest in peace. You're not doing anything to basically give justice for Mr. Floyd if there was any there's a justice that needs to be done. And you know what really gets me uh, perturbed is the fact that this goes on night after night after night, and this is supported by the news media. This is supported by leftist leaning politicians in Washington, in the local elections and stuff like that. So the next time you go to the polls and vote, look who you're voting for and look how they're behaving right now. When you're basically having thugs going out there and firebombing stores and going in there and tearing stores apart and stuff like that, I'll tell you one thing. If I owned a store, say like Macy's or something like that, one of the first things I'd do, every store that was in the city of these major cities that are run by Democrats, I'd turn around and pull all the stores out. I'd pull every single store out and let everybody in there basically have to travel outside the city to go shopping. The reason why, number one, better security. Number two, basically it's a lot harder to firebomb stores when protesters have to walk 20 miles to get to the store. So that would be the first thing that I would do as a response to this, because obviously, all this damage, and this is the other thing you got to point out too, all this damage is being done to these stores. If these stores are insured, right? If these store owners have insurance on their stores and stuff like that you're firebombing, well, guess what happens when they file a claim for this? Number one, they're going to file a claim, and number two, when the claim gets filed, their insurance rates are going to rise, which means that basically everybody that shops at that store, if the store comes back, will basically have to pay higher prices to support those insurance rates that store owner has to pay because of the damage being done. That is something you need to take into account. There's no excuse for the kind of behavior that's going on in the streets of America today, whether it's in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, York, Pennsylvania, or anywhere else in the country. There's no excuse for it. And for people to stand around here and be totally lawless and running around here with total impunity because they're not getting arrested, the only reason why you're not getting arrested is because the politicians in those cities have made it possible for you to be a criminal. And here's what's going to happen. You may be in that city, but that city's going to die. And when that city dies and you're still in it, there's going to be no stores. There's going to be no this, no that. You're going to have to drive outside the city where you live to do all your shopping and everything else like that. And if you've got a car or have to take the bus, well, there goes another one too. When buses have to go downtown and stuff like that or uptown, and they get attacked by mobs of people in the street, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior. And you basically, when you partake in that kind of behavior, you're nothing more than a criminal. And that's all there is to it. And, the civil rights, I heard the civil rights attorney, and it was a clip that she said, we're all going to have to come up together equally. Unfortunately, not everybody comes up together equally. Everybody comes up together at different rates. They rise at different rates. Some people rise quicker than others. But that's not because of racism. That's because of as a person's ability to achieve what they can achieve. That's what that boils down to. It has nothing to do with race. Not at this day and age. For those people that believe that racism is systemic in society, tell me something. Tell me if you have to go sit at the back of the bus you have to go sit at the back of the bus when the back half of the bus when you get on a bus. Or tell me where are the washrooms that say colored and white? For going to the bathroom, things of that nature. We have come a long way in this country from that kind of segregation to a country where people live and work together, you know, and, some people live and work very well together, and other people, not so much. Um, you know, People always look at you of what you are, the way you are. And I'm pretty sure that some people are going to look at me and they're going to think that I'm some kind of a jerk. Well, maybe I am a jerk. But then again, I recognize that basically committing criminal acts is not going to give George Floyd any justice. And attacking people while they're driving by in their cars on the freeways and the city streets, that's not going to give George Floyd justice either. And you basically have become a criminal, and you deserve to be one thing, and that is to be arrested and thrown in jail. That's a fact of life. So that's all I came to say on those. Oh, there's something else I do want to bring up that I saw on Terrence Pop broadcast. The damage that all you rioters that are doing right now, the people that believe that there's systemic racism in this country, this is all being fanned and fueled by the liberal left in this country, who is responsible for the racism in this country. Yes, the liberal left, which is responsible for the racism in this country. The liberal left, which is the Democratic Party from the time of Andrew Jackson, President Andrew Jackson, which was 1805. From that time on, because it used to be called the Democratic Republican Party, which Thomas Jefferson was a member of, became the Democratic Party. Okay, and you know, uh, there were so many atrocities that were committed by Democrats, by the party. And if you listen to a Democrat politician talk today, you know how they talk? They talk they talk like a Soviet citizen when they talk about the Communist Party. That's how they think about the Democratic Party. This is all being done. This is all being done to achieve power away from the people and putting it in control of one political party, which is the Democratic Party. This is why this is all being done. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you are a local representative, state representative, or at the federal level, congressman or senator. Um, when you basically stand around here and allow these things to happen and not speak up on behalf of the people who obey the law, who basically go to work every day, pay their taxes, do what's right, and allow criminals to run roughshod over the city and call it protesting, there's something wrong with you. And people like you need to be kicked out of office if you're going to instigate a mob mentality. And that's a fact of life. And, unfortunately, we have a very intricate political system in this country, both at the federal, state, and local level. And to get rid of some of these politicians, which is next to impossible, because a lot of these politicians get voted in because they provide lots of goodies, courtesy of the taxpayers, to the voters. This is why our country's in the state that it is in right now. Are we a free country? We're still a free country, but not as free as we could be. We're not as free as we could be because, number one, we're not taught how to behave in a free country. What we're taught how to do is to turn around and attack other people for believing something different from you. That's what we're taught in this country today. We're not taught about talking to each other, explaining the differences, why this works, why this doesn't work. Let me give you people a hint that want to be mobs and want socialism to work and communism to work and everything like that. You think that's better than free market capitalism because you're poor and unwanted? Here's what's going to happen. When the hardliners take over, and they will, and there's going to be no more constitution as far as a Bill of Rights goes in this country, and, it's going to be a Marxist dictatorship, and there'll be no individual rights except what you're grandfathered into. Basically, The people that own guns are going to be able to keep their guns until they're dead. But you won't be able to pass your guns off to anybody else. The state will take the guns and destroy them. Why? Because number one, basically they want total control. And here's what's going to happen to all you people out there that are rioting and stuff like that. You're going to be found, you're going to be arrested, and then you'll just disappear. So before you start going off on a tangent, blowing up stores and doing this, think about what you're doing, because this is what the hardliners in Russia did to all the useful idiots out there that protested and did this. They turned around and cleaned house. They got rid of all the agitators. Why? Because they knew the agitators would come back to agitate them. They didn't want that. So they found all the agitators and they turned around. They killed them. Plain and simple. And what do you think could happen here if we have a socialist country in this? You think we're going to have goody and all this other stuff and people are still going to have to pay? No, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be no more Social Security. There's going to be no more Medicaid. There's going to be no more Medicare. There's going to be no food stamp program. There's going to be no more. There's going to be no more public funding for things, unless, of course, you're associated with the Democratic Party. All the other parties will be minority parties. The Democratic Party will reign supreme. It will be like the Communist Party used to be in the former Soviet Union. You will have no rights except what the Democratic Party says. And basically, if you speak out against them, you will basically be put to death, one way or the other. So for all of you that are running around there acting like criminals, destroying property, destroying this, because you want to get even for George Floyd, just remember one thing. The only thing you're destroying is your own country that you live in. And it's the freest country on earth. And basically it has the best standard of living for everybody, whether you've got white skin, whether you've got dark brown skin, whether you got light brown skin, or whether you got red skin or yellow skin. Doesn't matter. That's what it is. There was a song I used to sing in Sunday school when I was a kid, and it goes, Jesus loves the little children, all the little children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. And you have to look at this also. God's looking at us right now, and we're fighting amongst ourselves when we should be holding ourselves arm in arm as brothers. Now, I may not always agree on something with somebody else, but at the same token, what I saw those police officers do to George Floyd was wrong. They should not have been doing that while he was in custody. He should have been put in the back of a squad car. He should have been read his rights and then sent downtown. So, excuse me, my throat was dry. So for all those people that think that basically I'm on the side of the cops, I'm not. But what I am saying is there's something more that's going on here besides of what meets the eye. Well, there's a Justice Department investigation that's going on. There are a number of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota is doing the Attorney General there is doing an investigation. So hopefully within a couple of months we'll know something of what's happened, why situations happen the way they did. Does this excuse the police officer, Mr. Chauvin, for doing what he did to George Floyd? No, it doesn't excuse him. But basically, it will give a little better clarity of what's going on and why it happened the way it happened. So that's all I'm saying. So this is Jeff, the guy from Reston. I've said a lot tonight. So I'm here. And if you have any comments to leave at the bottom of the page, please do. I'd love to hear from you and say what you got to say. Anyways, y'all take care. God bless you, and you have a very good night. And take care. Bye-bye.